Welcome back to the North on the Tan and Green Shoot Channel. This video is all about celebrating the transgender community as it's Trans Elizabeth Empower Week for the trans community. My job as Burton Pride social media manager and a board mate is to inspire and show impassion in the whole our community. For this special reason, I invite Alexander to the video to explain his idea being a trans man in Derby LGBTQ profile. Let's say all hi to him.
Hi, my name's Alex. I volunteer with Derbyshire LGBT. A little bit about me, I volunteer a lot for LGBT stuff around the country. I'm currently doing some work with Exeter Pride, which is fantastic, and Bristol Pride, upcoming this year, as well as a few festivals around the country like Camp Trans and Queer Spirit Festival. I run Derbyshire LGBT's TransForum, which is the transgender social group that runs twice a month at the moment.
To tell you a bit about yourself there. The second question, personally, is what does Trans History Week mean to you personally?
Trans History Week is quite important and means a lot to me because we often get together for Trans Day of Remembrance, which is the 20th of November every year. And that is to honour all of the people that have been killed due to trans hate. Um, and we don't often celebrate trans stuff enough. And Trans History Week, especially as we're seeing at the moment, a lot of trans history is being removed and has been for a really, really long time. There is knowledge on the pharaohs back in Egypt, back in like the 1400s, that were not necessarily known by the term trans at the time, but weren't cis. There's a lot of history that we've lost over the years, including the books we lost due to the Nazi book burnings, the changes of education in school, even surrounding a lot of LGBT, with regards to books and things like that, and the education that they're taught around trans history is really limited. And trying to preserve all of that knowledge and get all the knowledge that we have together that's being shown in spaces, it's just a wonderful, wonderful way to honour so many of my trans siblings.
Yeah, certainly with the rise of Reform UK in the book collection, we are going to come onto that in question 4. What I was saying before that, with a bit of a cut in the video due to my camera cutting me out. Certainly with the rise of Reform UK and the rise of far right group in the UK, they are trying to demonise trans people, getting with the Supreme Court ruling in last month. But all the trans protests over the last month and this coming month, also what we be involved in at Burton Pride and broadcasting on social groups too. The question 3 is now, why is visibility and respect is so important for the trans community and non-binary community?
I think it's that's a good question. I think it's important because I think role models are important for everyone, really. I mean, a lot of people will have seen them growing up on TV or in their favorite singers, their favorite YouTubers, things like that. And for a lot of us that don't get representation, it's often a feeling of feeling quite invisible and feeling isolated and alone in what we're dealing with. I think the representation that we get from the community really allows people to see themselves in a way that they maybe otherwise don't get to. I personally grew up in a really small village and didn't have any role models around me. The few that I did have that were LGBT um, were, very, very important for my growth and my acceptance of myself as a person. Yeah, I think it's also really important for mental health. I know a lot of people struggle with their mental health, and we know that that can be a lot harder being trans, especially at the moment with everything going on. I think it's more important than ever now that we see that representation, so that we have hope and that we have people being a voice for our community, and that we're in spaces that we can see ourselves doing things like careers and important making important differences within our communities and the wider countries. um yeah, sorry, I got a little flustered there.
Yeah,
um
that's fine. That, yeah, me, that's a very good answer. Uh, Not much I want to add on to that, personally. You could mostly top it. It goes right into question 4 now, about the history, now into the... Speaking of the progress and change, recently we see the rise of Reform UK, witnessing in Derbyshire and the surrounding area, including Derbyshire, Lincolnshire too, Leicestershire, Nottinghamshire. So, what as I can at you and post the LGBT community feel about this as a whole?
so I want to start by saying that the Derbyshire results don't speak for a lot of Derby. Derby City Centre weren't actually allowed to vote in this election. And I just want to be clear that a lot of Derby doesn't necessarily feel that way, or the towns that are represented by the Staffordshire that they're in. Um, sorry, the Shire that they're in.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's quite difficult because we're seeing this low percentage of representation, unfortunately displayed in a way that it looks like that there's a lot more hate than there is. But it can
Mm.
feel really difficult. It's made it difficult for me and my friends to want to leave the house. I can rarely leave the house without getting harassed now, as it is. I think it will make people feel more comfortable in their hate. I think it will make people feel that they are the majority, and that they'll feel more secure in their harassment towards people, as they feel that that is now represented by a lot more people than it is. The flag things is appalling, to be honest. We have a lot of people in the UK, and in these areas, Derby is very multicultural. I can't speak for the other areas, but I'm sure they feel quite the same, as I know
Yeah.
Nottingham does. Um, but it's just appalling. There's so many people here. There's so much diversity. There's so many people from so many different places. I just think it creates this separation amongst a lot of people, and I think it will continue to do so. And I think really it is about separating us, because they know that we're not as strong when we're not all together. And yeah, it's awful.
True, yeah, so what we did at Burton Pride when we Reform UK won Staffordshire, really, we didn't come out straight away and talk about it. Of course, we wanted to calm down the upset at Burton Pride, think of a good response. But in Burton, it's controlled by Staffordshire County Council now. Is a lot of area in Burton now a Reform UK ward. That Burton Town is Reform UK. Burton Stretton is Reform UK. Uh, Banson is Reform UK. Okay. The only part of Burton is not Reform UK is Burton Kent. Is the area I'm located in. Is still Labour controlled. I mean, it put us in a very sticky position with us trying to do our first Pride this year. We don't know. We're hoping that they'll go ahead, but I got a dark feeling in the back of my mind somehow Reform UK is going to try to put a stop to it under inclusion and diversity, and telling us it's a waste of money and taxpayer ventures trying something like that. They would make up some kind of excuse. That my feeling. Hopefully that's not the case, but I do have a bad feeling in my back of my head that will happen. What do you personally think about that?
I think it's important now more than ever to remember that the first Pride was a protest and a riot, and that if ultimately protests are what we need to do and to bring the community together, I think that's really important. I think that we should look for ways that don't necessarily need the approval of them if that happens. Often a lot of the prides unfortunately become quite corporate, and that can be great for sponsorships, but it can be really lacking for what you actually represent. It can often mean making compromises because you need the funding to go ahead, and ultimately supporting brands and businesses that you wouldn't otherwise support or don't ethically and morally agree with. I think a lot of the time now it is more about the community than necessarily a pride as such. Like the protests and the marches that take place during those can often be the most crucial and most important part of all of them.
We'll go on to question six. Uh, Personally, can we answer question 4 and 5 together personally? What do you think for some of the biggest misrepresent people still have about gender identity?
I think that often it's this idea that we want to be a different gender or that we want to be a certain way, when often a lot of the community feel that we have been this way for a very long time. I often hear things like, I want to be a man. And it's like that's a big misunderstanding that
Or
it's something I simply desire.
can I do
Um,
comment in with a point? Or I want to be a woman too. Is that what you sometimes hear people saying too?
yeah, yeah, for sure. But yeah, it isn't like that. I think people will feel sorry for a lot of trans people, but I think a lot of us are quite proud of the fact that we're trans. Um, but also, a really common misconception is that non-binary people are 50% man and 50% woman. And that's not true for a lot of people. Or that gender fluid changes their gender identity every day. They can, maybe they won't. There's so many. I can't speak on behalf of obviously quite a lot of people, but I'm sure there are plenty. If anyone wants to go ahead and put some more in the comments, that would be great. Um, and yeah, it's also the fact that we don't really consider how this affects marginalized groups of people. Like a lot of my black friends, going back to the questions before you asked about the flags and stuff, I think that's going to impact them disproportionately. Um, I think it's going to affect our black trans siblings a lot more. Um, and yeah, it's a very, very common misconception that we deal with things a very particular way or that we're all the same. And we're not, we're completely separate individuals. And I've met a lot of trans and non binary people over the years, and they're all very individual and fantastic.
Okay. Okay, we'll go into question 8. Can you answer all the points? What advice would you give to someone who is starting their gender journey, transition from a man to female, female to male, man, or not having a gender at all?
I think I would say that it's okay to go at your own pace. It's perfectly okay to not know what label you want or not feel comfortable having labels or feel totally comfortable having a label. I think there's this really strict idea that we're supposed to have dysphoria and then be super uncomfortable with our bodies and try and erase the past version of us that existed to become our present selves. And I don't feel any shame about the girl I was raised to be. I just didn't grow up to be a woman. And I think it's this really, really common idea that I'm going to want to forget that I was ever raised and dealt with any of that, dealt with any of the misogyny that I dealt with, and go into being a man and this idea that of toxic masculinity. And I think that's something a lot of trans men deal with. And with trans women, it's there's not a lot I can say on it personally, but I'm really, really proud of my trans sisters. And I know it can be really hard for a lot of us that don't necessarily pass when we dress a certain way. And that if you don't feel safe being a certain way some days, it's perfectly okay and acceptable to hide. Like a lot of people will tell you be loud and proud, but it's really hard. It can be really hard. Sometimes I feel safer leaving the house as my authentic self if I'm with groups of people that love and support me. And sometimes, when I
Mm.
need to nip to the shop, I'm that person who puts on an oversized hoodie and just wants to be for a day. I don't necessarily want to be out and trans all the time. It can feel really scary. Sometimes I just want to be. And I would just say to you, take your time and, stay safe and be yourself in whatever way that means to you. And sometimes that can mean prioritizing keeping yourself safe. It's going to be a long fight, and we need you to be here for it.
Definitely
So
now
thank
with
you.
all what happened in the UK, we need a left movement to combat the right wing,
I
especially.
would quickly say sorry that I don't agree that it's a left movement anymore. I think the Labour Party that we have in is very much Tory light. I
Yeah,
don't think that, I think Green are the side we're going to at the moment.
yeah,
But when I say left now, I don't think it's representative of how a lot of us feel.
yeah. I'm not me ref in the part of the Labour Party.
Yeah.
Party. I mean more ref in like Green
Yeah, I
Party,
just wanted
and
to clarify that because I know a lot of people here left and think Labour, and unfortunately, right
yes,
now, Labour isn't on our side either.
Labour is moving more and more farther to the right.
Yeah.
With the wall correction, I think I hear something about like a league table of demonising criminals and put it in like a league table, like put in top, say the more crime we have in the country caused by people from Syria, for example, or Pakistan, or any other countries. They really want to go down that route of demonise people in a retail, like the primary, personally. Me, we need a left movement backed by parties like Greens, maybe the Red Liberal Democrat, I don't personally know, but 100% the Green. And with the Green leadership election coming up soon, and so as a Green Party member, I will be voting in. There is a video coming out on the channel about that very soon. I mean, I want to say that for that part of the video. Um, Number 9. What change you have seen in your local community when it comes to trans inclusions, like in your local community?
Um. Sorry. Can I just ask for clarification on that question
Yeah.
first?
What
Sorry. Is it what changes have I seen, or what changes would I like to see?
what change have you seen?
Okay.
Yes. On
Like
your.
what? When are we talking? Like how far back are we going on this? Sorry.
So I'll clarify. What changes have what change will you have? What changes what change have you seen in your local area and your local community when it comes to trans inclusion, that means in your local area and your local community with your job at Derby LGBT, what are you seeing changed in it?
Okay. So within the local community at the moment, the changes that I've seen is Nottingham Pastoral Project are doing a sticker system where they have recently been vetting businesses and spaces, restaurants, things like that. And they've been putting up these stickers in the windows that show if a venue is safe for a trans person to use the bathroom. They've actually been speaking to the businesses and making sure they're asking what will happen, what they will do if a trans person is questioned in their business, and they've been very proactive about this.
What change have you seen in your local community when it comes to trans inclusion in your local area where you live?
So at the moment, one of the biggest changes I've seen is Nottingham Pastoral Project are doing this thing with stickers where they're letting local businesses and bigger businesses like restaurants and such, and they are doing these questionnaires for the buildings and asking them things like what they would do if a trans person is questioned in their bathrooms, and then they're providing window stickers for the front of the business to show that they are an inclusive venue that you can go and use if you are a trans person. That's been quite a good change because I think a lot of the anxiety that I have now going out in public is where it's safe to go to the bathroom, and these stickers provide a knowledge of space that I'm certain is going to look out for me based on the vetting process that they've gone through. I particularly feel safer in Nottingham. There are a few businesses in Derby that have been able to take part in this, and it just that's a really big deal because there's a mapping online, and I myself am disabled and deal with issues around bathroom urgency. And that just means that I'm going to feel a lot more comfortable going particular places and planning my travel routes as there's that list online that I can map out and follow. As for Derby, honestly, I've not really seen a lot of changes. A lot of places unfortunately stayed quite quiet on what's been going on. Derbyshire LGBT have and always will be quite inclusive of trans people. They make a really, really big point of sticking up for our community. They were present at the protests. They've done so much for the community. They're the reason I get to run TransForum. But as for spaces like the Crown, I've not so far heard anything about how they're planning to implement these bathroom changes. They're the only Pride venue in the city. So I'm not sure if they're going to speak out about what they're looking to do with this or if they're going to work with those systems. I know I'm lucky enough to know a few businesses myself where I know that I'm not necessarily going to get questioned, but it still feels risky when they've not outwardly put their support there. I'm fortunate enough to know a few places in the city that have gender neutral bathrooms or that have bathrooms that are accessible. So, for example, two of my favourite bars in the city, the Old Bell and the Hairy Dog. The Old Bell's Tudor Bar has a gender neutral bathroom, and the Hairy Dog has an accessible bathroom. But you know, a lot of spaces I've not seen anything. I'll be honest. It's it's not that they're saying anything against us using the bathrooms. It's just they're not providing any clarity. I think that's due to the Supreme Court's ruling being very confusing for a lot of places and a lot of businesses. They're not exactly sure how to implement these changes.
Truthfully, yeah. In Burton, we got no sticker. What I've seen, Burton is a very small town. Personally, hopefully it comes to that small city and into small towns where more businesses will stand up and maybe want to upset some of their. Because some businesses say, oh, I don't want to upset my customer base. I don't want to lose customer. That means I don't want to start getting predictable and start saying you or having stickers because I might get question why I've been bringing politics into the workplace. Some businesses not right being politics, or I find out asking businesses this question too. What do you think about that when business say, oh, I don't want to be bringing politics into the business because they always put trans and LGBTQ issue into politics issues?
You're going to deal with any kind of politics in any business where you deal with people in any capacity. If you, for example, run a cafe, you're going to have employees, you're going to have customers. You're dealing with politics all the time, regardless of whether you know it or not, because a lot of the politics is just centered around people. And a lot of places will claim that they're inclusive spaces, but then do nothing to represent that. When you're saying you're inclusive and you're not showing your solidarity spaces, you're also showing us that you're also inclusive of this hatred, of this bigotry, that you pride your profits above your morals and your ethics. And that, if that's what you feel you need to do to survive, then that's fine, but you are going to still get a lot less support from the other side of things. I think it's really important to have a stance on it because it shows people where you are, who you are as a person. I know for sure that I'm 100% not supporting any of the businesses at the moment that haven't, that have said anything hateful or outwardly shown support for the bigots. So I think either way, at this rate, really, you're going to lose a customer. I think it's up to you to decide which side of this you want to be on.
Truthfully. Number 10. What will do event like Burton Pride, Derbyshire LGBTQ, and the Trans History Week pay in creating safe spaces? I mean, a charity as us too. What our job role to create safe spaces?
I think that's a really tricky one because again, it comes under the things you can do, things you're allowed to do. Like for yourself, talking about Burton Pride and maybe the loss of support this year, it makes it a bit harder. I think that doing everything you can do with the resources that you have, reaching out for more resources, working together with other local community spaces like yourselves showing up the other week for that protest and going the Rainbow Walk and showing support for Derbyshire LGBT when they're struggling with their funding as well is really important. I think it's really crucial now to know when these spaces are available, where those meetings are, what's going on, how we as a community can help with things like that. A lot of us have other resources that we can maybe help to benefit yourselves. It's a really tough question because I wish there was more that you could do, and I wish that that we could do more as a community. I think at the moment it is a lot of red tape. I think reaching out to local businesses could be a really important step to make sure that, again, similar to what Nottingham Pastoral Project are doing, what spaces that people can use. And how they're going to protect the community from any hate in those venues. But ultimately, it's quite difficult, as I'm sure you understood yourself.
Yeah, true. Yeah. That was personally the last question on this video. Is there any other question people want to say their story? You can comment below if you feel safe to do that. You also can email Burton Pride. The email will be description below. You can tell about your story there. That all be for eyes and I always to see me. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and we always listen for everybody feedback. Keep on celebrating trans community. Does not this week, but every single day of your life. Goodbye for now. Bye.